What up there, IDS Mob? Welcome to Harry Dating Convos. This is where we talk about the wonderful world of dating, relationships, and give you tips and guidance on how you can become a more effective dater and attract the women you desire. I'm Harry Wilmington, and on today's show, we're going to just get straight to it. So today's show, we're talking about, are you the a-hole for expecting her to change? And so when I got up this morning, I was looking through various Reddit posts, and one of the more popular parts of Reddit is this forum called Am I the A-hole, where people put forth stories that are going on in their lives about situations they're going through, and then they lay out the story and then ask the audience at large, based on what I've just told you, am I the a-hole in this situation or am I not? And then people down in the comments will either say, oh, you're not an a-hole because this other person's at fault, or yes, you are an a-hole and this is why you're at fault. And I find these stories be quite fascinating because, you know, it's very easy as the storyteller to tell a story in a way that is going to put you in the good graces of other people. And a lot of times on these forums, when people are telling stories about what's happening, they really try to paint it in a way where even if they said something malicious or they in fact are the ones at fault, it was from a good lens and they didn't have any intended harm, or they didn't think the thing that they said or did was all that like scandalous or bad in the first place. And hey, sometimes it is not, and sometimes it is. But sometimes there's a perspective of, when does it become the point at which either you or that other person was the a-hole? And I find a lot of times with relationship stuff that sometimes when you're with a person in the moment, the thing that they're doing could make them appear to be like they're the a-holes. But if you look at the history and totality of their relationship and you really look at where it first started and what's been going on, if you look at it from a different lens, it could be that you were actually the a-hole the whole time. And I know people don't like to call themselves out for being a-holes or doing things that may have unintentionally caused a situation to happen. But I find in these cases I'm going to talk about today that that can be very much a thing, especially as it pertains to you as a guy expecting that a woman that you've been with long enough is just going to want to change because she loves you, or she's been with you a long time, or it's time for her to work on stuff and she should want to. And so I'm going to go over a couple of stories that I saw on the forum. I'm going to talk about whether or not these people that are telling the story were the a-hole or whether the woman involved was an a-hole. And then I really want to talk about this idea of why it is that people at large, but men in particular, like always have this thought or idea that women that love them are going to just change, and why that is disadvantageous to you as a dater. All right. So we're going to get into that. As always, the show is brought to you by my website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. You can go there to check out my ebooks, audiobooks, and various programs that are all designed to help you improve your dating life. You can also go there for one-on-one coaching. And as always, if you like this channel, give this video a like, give it a subscribe. It definitely helps with the algorithm. And feel free to share these videos with other guys that may also need dating assistance. So let's go ahead and get into some of these Reddit stories that I came across, right? So what I want to do, I'm going to read these two examples of stories that really illustrate what I'm talking about in terms of when you first meet a woman and you're learning about her, you're hearing her life stories, you're spending time with her, she's going to start presenting characteristics and traits, right? And in the honeymoon phase of the relationship, the dating phase, it's very easy to see things that a woman is doing. And even if there's red flags that are coming forth, or even just not even red flags, just things that you know you don't want to deal with long term, a woman could be doing some of those things and you're thinking, well, it's cool for now. I can handle it. It's no big deal. And what I found is that people generally don't change. Like how a person is when you first meet them is going to, and the things that they're doing and the habits they have, it's very hard for a person to change those things, to not do them anymore. Especially once we hit the age of 25, we're pretty much locked into how our personalities are and the things we like and the habits we have. So you thinking, especially after 25, that you're going to meet a woman and then change up the way that she's operating, that's not going to happen. But anyway, so let's read over this first guy's story. So his question was, am I the a-hole because the wife was wearing a revealing bikini at a friend's party? And the story goes, my wife and I have been together for 2 years now. So they got married quick. Like they met, dated for probably like a year, and then got married. I recommend, as a general rule, most guys need to be dating their women a minimum of 2 years before they even think about things like marriage and long-term plans, because that gives you plenty of time to see the various facets of her behavior and be able to make a determination about if the things that she's doing are things that you can handle long-term. Anyway, so he says, my wife and I have been together for 2 years now, and it's been mostly okay between us. She's really confident and worked hard on her body, so she likes to get revealing clothes, which I do respect, but when I saw the bikini she got, it was way more revealing than anything she's ever worn. I'm in no way trying to control her, so I always feel the guilt and just accept it. So notice what he said right here. On the one hand, he's saying she likes to get revealing clothes, which I do respect. But then in the next sentence, he says, I always feel guilt when she wears these revealing clothes, and I just accept it. So in other words, when she wears this revealing clothing, he just assumes, okay, I feel bad about that. I feel some kind of way, but you know what? I'm just going to shut up and let her do that. And that is the wrong course of action if you are a guy that knows that he's not going to want his woman long-term wearing all these revealing clothes. Now, some people could call that controlling. And there are guys out there that can handle their women wearing the thinnest of thongs and the tightest of bras and stuff out in public or whatever. And hey, if you're that guy that can handle that, then that's perfectly fine. But it's also fine to be a guy that doesn't want his woman parading around the goods. I myself am a guy that is typically tend to date women that are a bit more modest in terms of what they wear. Like, they'll put it all on the line for me when we're at home together, we're in the bedroom, she's trying to be seductive. Like, that's a great time. But most women that I date have this, I don't even have to like explain this to them. They just have the understanding that, like, if they don't want to get overly harassed by guys in public, because women at large are going to be harassed regardless, even if like they're wearing, like a nun outfit or whatever. If they have any kind of big boobs, for one, just by definition of them having big boobs, even if they're wearing a turtleneck sweater, guys are going to still be complimenting, oh my God, those curves are so amazing. I wish I could ride those. Oh my God. So, but that's with them not doing something. But for a woman to go out there and purposely wear like cleavage wearing stuff and tight jeans and, has a big old crack right here in the middle of her shirt, that's a woman that is trying to say, I want to get all the attention from the world. I'm not a guy that likes that, so I just managed to not date girls that tend to do that. And so, but most women understand that also. So if you as a guy know that that's going to be something that bothers you, then you cannot date women that are going to want to show their tatas off. But I say this to say this, right, is that this guy is bothered by that. And rather than saying, you know what, I don't think this is acceptable behavior, or I'm just a guy that can't handle when my woman's like going out there and showing her body off, so no offense to you, this isn't going to work out. He didn't do that. What did he decide to do? He saw her wearing revealing clothing and said, I'm going to suck it up because I want her. And I just hope maybe it'll change later. At least that's the given thought process. But it's like, yeah, he's dating somebody that wants to do that. And he's thinking at some point down the line, I can make her change that up. And I'm here to tell you that is probably not going to happen. So anyway, the outfit she's wearing, it's one of those bikinis that fit tighter and a thong. It doesn't help that she got a size smaller. So basically her entire butt is out. And if she bends over at all, it doesn't even really cover her literal butthole. Oh, man. No other woman at the party had a bikini like that, so she really stood out. I noticed many guys eyeing her up, so I asked her if she could put a towel on when we were hanging out drinking. So she's wearing revealing clothing and she's drinking. These are not good combinations that are going to make either her or other guys around her make good decisions about the protocol for boundaries on her body, Anyway, he says, and that's when the heat started. I let it go. I didn't want to fight. So because this guy's afraid of starting a fight with his now wife, he's afraid to have the conversation of like, look, we're married now, but also, you've been wearing revealing clothing and it's not something that appeases me and it really bothers me, He says, we all got in the pool later everyone was pretty drunk. I tell you guys all the time, please, please, please take alcohol out of your life as much as possible. Like dating and having alcohol and marrying alcohol causes more relationship problems than anything out there. And so if you can lessen the amount of drinking that you do, you'll find you'll have less arguments, you'll be less moody in general, and you won't want to be starting a fight with your significant other more often than not. Anyway, we all got in the pool. Everyone was pretty drunk, including myself. Again, her bikini started falling apart on the string since it's too small, and I kept trying to fix it for her. It effing sucked being in that position. When we got home, I was pretty mad and said some things, making her upset. And she's telling me, okay, so first off, guys, like, it's perfectly fine to have a discussion with your significant other about things that are bugging you or things that she did that are hurting your feelings. But as a guy, as a general rule, most women are going to follow your lead. And I find that, unfortunately, because most dudes will be like, I don't know why she started yelling at me, this is that. But if we really follow the rabbit trail, usually a guy will say some stuff that's matter of fact, but also taking a dig at her, at which point she suddenly flew off the handle. You guys have to get better at being able to control how you're saying things and the things you're saying to women. Yes, you can air grievances. You can tell them that you're disappointed in them, you're upset, but to go at the point where you're like insulting them, name calling them, or making them feel less than, that is not necessary for you as a guy to get your point across. Learn to do better with that. But anyway, so he says, and she's telling me I can't control what she wears and I'm insecure if I'm afraid of someone seeing her body. Does this sound like a woman that is trying to be agreeable or that is trying to respect the fact that she has a guy there that doesn't want her body out there for other people to see? And again, this is a choice because there are some guys that would take a woman like this and be completely fine. But if you're not that guy, then it's his fault for taking this woman on in the first place, knowing that she was like this. So then he says, I don't know how to feel or what to do because everything's perfect besides this little thing. It's not a little thing. This is going to be a major issue because now she's going to start trying to test your boundaries more and more to see what's the least amount of clothing I can wear that's going to really rile him up. And because women will do that, they'll try to test you and they'll see that something bugs you and be like, okay, I need to see just how much this bugs him. How much can I get away with? What boundaries can I actually push? And so this is going to go from like a small thing to a major thing later. It just makes me feel jealous really easily. I'm trying to not be insecure about who sees her body, but I didn't want her basically naked in front of a bunch of her friends and their husbands/boyfriends. So he put this in the Am I the A-hole subreddit, right? And so obviously people that are going to be up and down that subreddit, if you hear his story, they're going to think logically like, well, she is showing off her body and she should be able to respect you more and understand your feelings about things. And so, yeah, she's going to be the a-hole for that because she should know better and she's a wife now and blah, 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 blah. And I would stress that this guy is actually the a-hole. Why? Because early on in their courtship, he was already being able to see times when she was not wearing a lot of clothing. And rather than the first time she did it, bringing it up and saying, hey, what's with the outfit, or jokingly saying something and being like, hey, you know what? I think you're really hot and gorgeous, but is there really any reason why you have to show that off to like other people? And if she fought him on it, he could have been like, you know what? I respect your right to be able to do with your body what you want. I also have the right to be with somebody that's not going to show that off and potentially put me at risk. Because here's the thing, guy, like women don't think about the fact that them wearing revealing clothing out in public around you, she's thinking you're insecure. We as guys know the problems that come with that. Other guys trying to approach her, other guys trying to touch her inappropriately. And if that happens, guess who she's going to want to jump in and save the day? You. So if you're a 5'10" guy like I am, and this 6'5" dude with like big old muscles is trying to touch on her and she doesn't like it because she's trying to respect the relationship, she's going to expect you to handle that guy now. And that's for women watching. We don't want to deal with that. So this is the case where, but again, despite all that, the reality is she was already showing him who she was in the dating phase. And when that happened, he decided to, what's the words he used? He felt guilt, but he would just accept it because he didn't want to be seen as controlling. But the reality is she was showing behavior that he was not going to appreciate long-term. At the point that he married her, what he is telling her is, I accept all the behavior you do, including the stuff that I don't think I like, because I'm in this for the long haul. So I'm now going to say that whatever you're doing is totally fine. And that's what happens when you commit to women that are doing things that you don't want them to do, is that you are telling them in no uncertain terms, you're fine with that behavior. So then to come back later on and be like, hey, babe, so you shouldn't be wearing revealing clothing and it really annoys me and bugs me. Well, we could argue that she should know better, but I did a whole episode of this show about shooting women to death. Like, it doesn't matter what they should do or should feel. It matters how they actually are. In this case, how she is she wants to show off her body. If you're not a guy that can handle that, then at the point where you decide to accept it and then try to make it an issue later, you are in fact being the a-hole, because you're now not accepting her on the terms that you initially accepted her on. And that's not fair to her, even if you don't find her actions all that appealing to you, okay? So that's the first thing. That's the first story that I saw this morning. But the one that really got me thrown this morning was the one you guys probably saw in the thumbnail, which we're going to go over right now. So this is the initial story that I saw on Reddit. And the story goes, am I the a-hole for telling my wife that late pickup fees are on her and her alone? And so what this story is going to illustrate is the concept of the fact that people don't change just because you want them to. If anything, however you met them, once you get into a marriage and a long-term relationship, that is behavior that's only going to be amplified over time. And you may think in the beginning, oh, that behavior is so cute, or, oh, it's just a little hiccup right now, but you'll change it later. But if you're not aware, then this can have ripple effects later on, especially once kids and things start to become more involved, as this story will illustrate. So let's get into this story. So this guy says, I'm 34 years old. My wife is 33 years old. We've been together for 10 years and have a 4-year-old son together. So they've been together total for 10 years, right? He says, ever since we started dating, my wife, back then girlfriend, has chronically been late. I can count on one hand in 10 years how many times I remember her being on time. She has this bizarre tendency to leave when we're supposed to be arriving at whatever venue we're going to. If we have restaurant reservations at 7 o'clock, she's not ready to go until 7 o'clock. If the movie starts at 5:45, she's not ready to leave until 5:45. I used to find it kind of humorous and almost endearing. There was an ongoing joke of her being from the distant future where we had figured out wormhole technology for instant teleportation and that she had just not adapted to present year yet. Ha, 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 ha. But now that we have a child together and important appointments for which we cannot be late, it's not funny anymore. It regularly causes me a significant amount of stress. So this is another example of a woman was doing something that this guy did not like during the dating phase, right? And I don't know how long they've been married, but they've been together for 10 years. They have a 4-year-old. So let's just say a 4-year-old son. Let's say they dated for 2 years. Or they were married for 2 years, and then they were dating before that. So we'll say that they've been married for about 6 years, right? But they dated for 4 years. We'll say 3 to 4 years they dated, right? And so during that time, in the 3 or 4 years that they dated, she was consistently late. And at no time did he say to her, or maybe he did, but at no time did he really push, hey, you know what? This is actually like a big deal. Like, you're never on time. Like, there are things I'm trying to get to. There are things I'm trying to plan. There are dinners I have with, associates at my job or whatever, where I'm trying to create, meetings to meet up with my families and friends and stuff. And just overall, I don't feel respected when you're not on time. So how can we fix this situation? Because if this is just how you are, then fine. I can adjust to, like, say, okay, if the thing starts at 5:45, I'll tell you it's at like 5:20. So you'll be ready at 5:20, right? But he didn't do that. Nor did he say, you know what? You seem to be late to everything, and I just noticed this is going to be a long-term thing, and I'm really a time stickler, so I just feel as though this isn't going to work out. Because I've been that guy. Like, I dated a woman years ago. We went on 5 dates, and 4 of the dates she was late to. And that last date, I had bought tickets for us to go see a play somewhere, and she was going to come pick me up to go see the play. The play started at 9 o'clock. She got to my place to pick me up at 8:58, at which point I'd already canceled the tickets to the play. I literally went outside to her car and said, we're already late. I dressed up for the date, and I ended up just getting back in plain clothes and just said, this isn't going to work out. Like, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work out, because she was the first date. She was like 45 minutes late. And this is the time when I didn't have a car. The fact that I didn't have a car and I was still getting to these dates on time, and she, who had a car, could not get to the date on time, I just knew in a long-term relationship, that was going to frustrate me every time to no end, because even if she didn't mean to hurt my feelings, it felt disrespectful. It didn't feel good. It wasn't taking into account that I may have other things going on with my day that would mean that her being on time for this date was really important. And so I just said, you know what? Hey, I can't change her. I just know what works for me. And what works for me is not dating somebody that's not going to be on time. That's what I did. What this guy did is said, ha ha, it's so funny. She's late all the time. Oh, I'm going to act like it doesn't bug me at all. He. But what does that do? It makes her feel as though, even though he's saying on one hand that time may be important, in the grand scheme of things, his actions aren't demonstrating that time is actually as important as he's trying to make it out to be. And so she got to experience on her end 4 years of being late and not getting any critiques for it, not getting punished for it. In fact, it's being joked about, so we all assume this is totally fine, right? But maybe he did that thinking, okay, she's not on time for things now, but in the future, maybe when we have kids or so, she'll start to recognize being on time is important and she'll change up. And that is the downfall of many men. This idea that because circumstances change, or because she loves you, or because she has kids now, that whatever her habits are going to just poof, magically change because of the power of love. And so let's just go through the rest of this story to see what actually happens. So this guy says they got kids now, and our son started going to daycare last year. Since my wife is a stay-at-home mom, taking him to and from daycare is her responsibility. Naturally, because the kids, again, up to this point, it's a habit and it has not been corrected, and this is just how she is. She is late dropping him off every day, and then she is late picking him up. In the middle of August, our son's daycare sent out a group email informing us that there would be a new fee for any late pickups. Every minute that a parent was late, the daycare would tack on a $2 fee. 10 minutes late would incur a $20 fee. And then he says, to be perfectly honest, there's no doubt in my mind that they started this because of my wife, who was late to pick him up literally every day his first year. So, by the way, because most teaching locations are run by women, this is an example of like women being passively aggressive. They're not going to confront this mom directly and say, hey, you're picking up your kid late. It's causing us to go home late, and that's not fair to us, so could you please stop it? No. That's because women are passive. So what they're going to do instead is say, attention parents, all parents, guy parents and girl parents, we've decided to implement a late fee charge. That way they're not calling her out directly, and she can just assume that that's for everybody, not just her. So this is a great example of how women communicate their needs without like being forthright about it. I just found that fascinating that that's how they decided to handle this problem with this one person that's picking up their son late all the time. So he said, I've tried to get her to be better, but when confronted, she always has an excuse ready to go, which makes it impossible to have any discussion about the subject. Well, the reality is, if you had been trying to have these discussions earlier in your relationship, like when you first dated, you would have been able to see that she, in fact, does not want to change or does not want to work hard at being able to be on time, at which point you could have made the decision, you know what? We've tried it. You don't seem to want to respect that I need you to be on time, so I'm out. And hey, you are not the bad guy for doing that. You're not the bad guy for saying, I'm seeing a thing you're doing repeatedly. I feel disrespected, and so I don't want to deal with this anymore. But you do become that a-hole guy when you accept this behavior for years, and then one day you're just like, hey, you know what? You should stop doing the thing that you've been doing for all this time, because it's actually not being helpful to anybody. Like, it'd be great if she would do that, but is she going to do that? And again, habits are hard to break, but especially habits that have been accepted by you for such a long period of time, because then it looks like you're the one that's switching up on what you were perfectly acceptable handling from her in the first place. Anyway, so then he says, our bill for the first 2 weeks of September just arrived. Lo and behold, on top of the normal fee, I found a $262 late pickup fee on the bill, which means that my wife was late to pick him up on average 12 minutes per day. Ouch. So the daycare thought they were going to be able to curtail her behavior by charging a fee, and she was just like, I don't pay the fee, so I'll do what I want. And now money's coming in that he's going to be expected to pay out. But anyway, so he says, I told my wife that as usual, I would be paying for the normal fees, but she would have to pay the $262 late pickup fee out of her $800 allowance. She initially refused, saying she couldn't afford it, despite having no real expenses other than her phone and Netflix. And then she called the daycare to try and debate the issue. Oh my God, she's a Karen. I watched as she tried to play Erin Brockovich. She eventually tired herself out frantically Googling laws while on the phone and hung up on the poor staff. This lady does not sound like a person that is emotionally stable, but again, she probably showed instances of this when they were dating, and he probably just thought, it'll get better. Clearly, it's not getting better. So then he says, at the time, I told her that it was entirely her fault and that if she can't even do the bare minimum of being an adult, she needs to grow up. Okay, point of contention, right? What he's saying is technically accurate. But like I said previously, you guys cannot go about saying things to women like, well, if you would just do the bare minimum, if you would just be an adult, you just need to grow up, because those kind of words are not the words that are going to have a woman that are not going to win a woman over to your good graces. Like, even if she was potentially open to hearing what he had to say, he could have just said, hey, babe, you know what? Like, let's say what he said. He said, she could say, hey, babe, you know what? We talked about the fact that, you're late on things. And, now the daycare's trying to tell us that, hey, we need to be on time more. So, I don't know what we need to do to rectify the situation, but clearly there's something that's not working that's causing you to be late. Let's work on a plan to make sure that that's curtailed so we don't have these expenses anymore. That would have been a way to say, hey, this is a serious thing. I feel some kind of way about it. Let's fix it. But him saying, oh, and by the way, you're not a grown-up. You're not an adult. How is that going to win people over? Just like you as a guy wouldn't watch a woman saying, oh, you need to be a real man. The neighbor down the street does a better job than you. Like, all these things of thinking that you can insult the person and then not understand why they're getting mad at you back. Like, again, learn how to be a better communicator. And yes, sometimes you might say something that a woman won't like, but there's a difference between like you saying something that is constructive, even if she doesn't like it, versus you saying something constructive and also throwing in an insult. Like, the insult part for a lot of you guys, it's what's causing women to go haywire and not want to listen to you. So even if you feel in the moment that your butt hurt, or I got this really good dig I could do with this person, digs are not going to help you win what you want. So let's just take that out of our vocabulary, guys. It's not necessary. Even if they do it to you, you can be like, look, I've had women at times where I'm talking to them and they try to throw out an insult. And I'm just like, okay, look, we can talk about this all day. We're not going to insult each other. So I'm going to sit here and listen to you. What do you have to say? And don't feel the need to throw names in there. It's not necessary for me to hear you. Like, you got to take the lead on that. If your lead is insulting, is it any wonder that she's going to insult you back and then fly off the handle? But I digress. The point is, so he said all that. And then she immediately began barraging me with excuses. She then laid down her final debate ending question, quote, why don't you just pick him up then? End quote. And he says, because I'm at work. I work for a living. Anyway, the daycare won't take him back until the bill is paid in full. I feel terrible for my son because he's completely innocent in all of this and loves going to daycare. But I feel like it's the only way to get my wife to realize there are consequences for her tardiness. Am I pushing it too far, too fast, or should I stick to my guns? So, to his original question, which was, am I the a-hole for telling my wife that late pickup fees are on her and her alone? And so in the comments down below this thing, a lot of people were like, you're not the a-hole, she's the a-hole, she should do better. How dare she do this to her son? I feel so bad for him. And oh, yeah, she needs to pay for this and that. So of course, me being me, I commented and I said, hey guy, I get it. I'm a time stickler. I came from a family where my dad was in the Army, and Army people always on time. I grew up in the theater, where theater's motto is to be early is to be on time is to be late, and to be late is inexcusable. And so just as a general rule, I've always been on time for things. The few times that I'm not, I call ahead. Hey, I'm running like 5 minutes late. Like, it's never more than like 5 minutes. I'm going to be there as soon as possible, even with like LA traffic. Even when I was without a car and riding the bus, I could still manage to get places on time. So I said, I get it. I understand that I'm a stickler for time. It is annoying when the person you're with cannot be there on time. But if I'm being honest, guy, you're actually the a-hole. Because again, you saw this behavior during the 4 years that you were dating her. At no time did you say it was an issue. You didn't, from your message, it doesn't sound like you brought it up. You made it into a joke where it seemed like to her, it didn't really bother you. So you presented yourself as a person that's actually fine with the person you're dating or being with not being on time. And now you want to flip it and be like, okay, you got to be on time all the time. This the way you were before. I could handle it back then, but now I can't. And that's not fair to her because she's probably been late since she was like a child. She was late in her teenage years, in her adult years. She was late with her family to family functions, probably late to school half the time. Like, it's not a personal thing. He's taking it as personal. Like, it's almost like he's saying, like, you being late is a personal affront to me and you don't care for my feelings. And this is who she is. But she was showing this version of herself, to be fair, in the dating phase. If you decided that you saw her being late all the time, and then you said, you know what? I'm not going to talk to her about it. I'm going to make jokes about it. I'm going to marry her knowing that she'll probably show up late to the altar. Ha, 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 ha. Then at the point that you decide you don't want to deal with that anymore and you want to change the rules of how this has worked for 10 years, yeah, I'd say objectively you're the a-hole because you weren't recognizing that you were taking her on as she is. And if it was a problem, you could have got out. Now, some people could say, but Harry, just because she does one thing or two things here that annoy me, I shouldn't just throw away the whole relationship. I'm saying that is true, at which point you have the 80-20 rule. If 80% of what you're getting is good and there's 20% that bugs you, you got to decide if you can really objectively live with the 20% that you're not going to get or the 20% of things about her that are going to annoy you. Because again, you're making the assumption that, but it can eventually change or she'll change for me or she'll get better. What if she never does? Like, you have to look at the girl you're dating right now and objectively say, you know, the way she picks her ear, the way she smacks her food, the way she drives, these are things that are driving me crazy right now. But is it at the level where if she never changed these things, I'd be totally fine? And for some things you might find, you know what? Hey, some people can be like, objectively, if she's not on time for stuff, I guess I'll deal with it. If the daycare thing happens, I'll just know to call the school and say, hey, can you let them know that school gets out at 6:40? That way she'll be there by 7 o'clock and you'll just deal with it. But if you're a guy that can't deal with that, then it is not fair to make her be the person that is going to objectively have to change a thing that she either doesn't want to change or does not feel like changing. And that's the thing, is that it's not a bad thing for her to be this way. Like, it'd be nice if she was on time for stuff, but the reality is some people will be fine with this, and this is how she lived her whole life. So she has no need to change it because up to this point, it's been totally fine. Now, this isn't to say that in a relationship, people shouldn't change or won't change. You know, obviously, when you get into a coupledom, there's going to be things that you compromise and sometimes compromise about yourself. If you're a guy that likes to go to the club every night and you meet a girl that wants to be with you long term, you're going to probably think to yourself, you know what, maybe clubbing every night isn't the lifestyle that's going to make this relationship work. Maybe I should change it to like once a week or once a month or whatever. I can talk to her about this and see what that compromise looks like because she's not seemingly trying to stop me from going out, which is good. I don't think women should be coming to you and trying to outright change you, but you recognizing for the good of the relationship that there are certain things that you could change, that is actually beneficial. And you being with a partner that's open to that is also good. But also understand that there are some things about that other person that they just may not want to change. They may like the fact that they get places late because they like to live free and carefree and go how the wind blows them. And that just might be their lifestyle. And they might need to marry a guy that's more hippie-like that also understands that lifestyle and is cool with it. That might not be you. That's totally fine. But it's good to recognize that early on and get rid of it early on than to essentially lie to that other person and say what they're doing is okay, it's totally fine, you're totally okay with whatever they're doing, and then get mad at them later. I just find fundamentally that is not the best mode of operandi to go on. But let's ask a bigger question, which is, why is it that we as men assume that a woman's going to change for us in the first place? And there are several reasons behind this. For one, there's this idea that has, people buy into, especially baby and stuff like that, that love and patience are going to fix everything. Oh, if we love each other enough. Oh, if I just tell them my needs and desires, they'll completely change up for me. And that's not how people work, because your love, quote unquote, is fighting against X amount of years that she's made this a habit to where the habit itself is the thing that's hard to break. And you coming along thinking you're going to be Captain Save-'em to make her change these things, this because of your love, that could be very well something that does not happen, Also, so there's societal conditioning. There's a belief that she's like this now, but once kids come into play, once we get married, once she sees the bigger picture, then she's totally going to change this thing. Tell that to people that have married druggies and alcoholics that they thought, they'll get this thing under control once we actually get in a relationship. Spoiler, it rarely happens. Another reason is that Guys have a tendency to think that, their influence or leadership is going to improve your partner. Like, you're going to think, I'm so confident, I'm going to show her that I can do X, Y, and Z thing, and it's going to make her realize, oh, snap, I should totally change myself and be different. And again, she could love you all day long, and she could have all the care in the world for you and respect you and appreciate you and still want to do the thing that she's always been doing. She could love you to death and still be late places. And that's the reality that people don't want to face, is that we do not have the inherent power to just make somebody change or do something that we want them to do. They have to want to do it of their own accord. Yes, a woman might build up high enough interest to realize, wait a minute, if I want to keep this guy, I should probably change some things. But even then, that has to be of her own accord. It can't be something that you are making her do or change. Okay. And so the unfortunate impact of ignoring reality, of ignoring this idea that women are going to change when they want to change and that you cannot inherently fix somebody, is a few things. For one, there's going to be resentment over unmet expectations on both sides, because she's going to feel as though she got with a partner that she thought was going to like her for her, and now they're saying that the thing they once accepted, they're no longer accepting. That feels like a trick. On your end of things, you had hope for who she could be and her potential, and now she's not doing it, and now you're extra mad because you thought you were going to be the one to change her. You thought your love was pure snow and rain and that you were going to make things better. And then you realize, oh, she doesn't actually have that motivation to do that. So now what are you doing? And it's going to cause you to build resentment, because you're going to put in all this effort and energy to try to fix her in some way that she doesn't want to be fixed, which means she's going to be fighting against you, and it's going to cause turmoil in your relationship. Another thing is that it's going to increase stress, because she's going to be stressed out that she's going to feel as though she's not good enough for you now, because you keep telling her basically that she is in fact not good enough based on the thing that she won't change. And then you're going to be stressed out because you're trying to pick your brain, thinking of 1,001 different angles to come at to fix this problem or fix this habit that she has that she doesn't want to do. And that's going to cause you to be butting heads with her all the time. Also, it's going to end up having a negative impact at large on other various things, your children, your finances, your overall well-being, just like with the daycare example, where it's like, because he decided to ignore her being late as a problem and decided to accept it, now he's having to pay financial dividends because the daycare is charging them for her not picking up their kid on time. And she's like, but I've literally always been this way. Like, now you're going to say I have to pay for being late when I've always been late? Like, what is this even about? And that's not fair to her. We can hate it all day, and this is crappy behavior by her. But she was consistent in who she was from the day that this guy met her. Therefore, she's not the a-hole. And so here's what I want you guys to start doing a lot better, okay? Because I don't want you getting stuck in situations that you don't want. And hey, understand, I get it. You might meet that woman that you connect on so many different levels. You guys talk a lot about a lot of things. You have a lot of the same interests and stuff like that. But there may be some things that you're seeing that you recognize long-term are going to annoy the living crap out of you. And you think to yourself, well, I should just accept it because we match at all these other levels. And what are the chances that I meet somebody else out there that's going to match me on the same levels? Spoiler, you will meet somebody else. I've been through enough relationships and then breakups and thinking, I guess I'll never find somebody like her. Oh, wait, I found somebody else. Like, they are out there. If you know how to effectively attract women, if you know how to talk to them, if you know what things attract them, then you can find that you can do that with a variety of women. If you need help with that, I got programs and ebooks at introvertdatingsuccess.com that you can check out. But suffice to say, here are some things you can start doing right now. So for one, please, please, please start recognizing red flags early for what they are. And a red flag to you could be different for the next person. Just like with the earlier story where the guy married the girl that's now wearing all this revealing clothing. Some dudes are like, yeah, I want the world at large to know what they're not getting. So babe, go ahead and show yourself off. But for some guys, they wouldn't like that. That would be a red flag, at which point you cannot ignore that, because if it's a problem now, it's going to be a problem later in your relationship. Do not think that that red flag you're seeing now is going to magically change because she falls in love with you. A lot of women will put on will hear you complaining about something and then put on a good show for a bit, and then you guys get married, and it's like, oh, I'm going back to my old ways now. But if you had recognized it early that this is probably something she likes to do and is not going to change, you wouldn't be stuck in the situation. Another thing is you need to communicate clearly and early on about the things that you like and don't like. You need to be talking about boundaries earlier in the relationship. If things are coming up that you find disrespectful or unpleasing, again, you ain't got to be mean. You ain't got to be insulting. You ain't got to be like, hey, you need to stop that crap right now because you're an adult and this and that. Just be like, hey, babe, I noticed you're doing this, or you said this thing, or like, let's talk about what that is. Hey, well, just, you know, like for me, for example, I'm not a yeller. I mean, I probably sound very loud on this podcast, but overall in my life, in terms of like when I'm with women, I'm not a yeller. I grew up in a household where I'll say during puberty, me and my brother were definitely trying to be yellers, and mom was just kind of like, we can talk about stuff and like not have to yell at each other. Like we can talk sternly, but we ain't got to yell. We ain't got to insult. We can sit there and hear each other. So in my relationships, I have found that I typically tend to be the one that's like, look, something's bugging you. Let's talk about it. You can just tell me, like, I'm not going to take it personally. I don't have an ego about me being a perfect person. Even me doing this show, I always tell women, I'm still in the process of learning, and I'm trying to learn you. I'm always trying to learn how to be better and do better, even though I think I'm pretty right now. But like, we can sit down and talk. And so what I don't accept is women yelling at me in conversations. I'm very much like, look, we had a fight the other day, and I know she was yelling at me. Let's talk about that. Like, I'm not that guy that's going to like not hear you. Like, you can say in a calm voice, whatever your issue is, we can talk about it. I will listen. If they decide that they don't want to do that and they want to keep yelling and they want to keep interrupting me when I'm trying to answer one of their points, then I'm just like, you know what? I don't have to deal with this. And I've literally gotten rid of women who, every time we had an argument or discussion, they wanted to overtalk, overyell, call names. And I'm just like, you know what? Initially, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to come back later when you're ready to actually sit down and talk, because I don't argue like this. And so I've had to date better women that talk that way. Lo and behold, guys, they are actually out there. I know it seems like a trip, but there are actually women out there that you can talk to in a calm way with arguments and it not go into a yelling or shouting match. That is very possible. And one thing I've recognized dating this long also is that there are women out there, as much as they say they're better at communication, that doesn't mean that they're all emotionally regulated. And there are some women out there that don't have emotional regulation. They will fight you at the flip of a handle. They will yell at you. They will insult you, and you shouldn't accept that. But if you do accept that and you marry that person, at that point, you've now accepted the way in which they do disagreements, and you are in fact being the a-hole for not recognizing that how they are is going to probably be how they are long-term. Okay. And then also, you have to start to know your limits and decide what your deal breakers are going to actually be, because there's nothing wrong with having boundaries and having deal breakers. I think that if you feel as though your woman dressing scantily clad or your woman showing up in certain ways that isn't going to be helpful, it's a good thing to know those things, so you know in advance what things to bring up if they should arise, you know? But ultimately, guy, you got to understand that at the end of the day, it'd be nice if a woman would change for you. If you could love her so much that she would, start thinking better about herself, or start, moving about the world in a way that's more respectful for your guys' relationship. But the reality is, whoever you meet, that's probably how they're going to be. And yes, she could get all the self-help books and try to do stuff, but she has to want to do it. But if she's not seemingly in the mode, like let's say for this guy, he brings up early on that she's not on time. If she's not actively working on that for the next 3 months, then that is saying to you, I don't care. How I've been moving up to this point with my lateness or whatever is how I want to be, and I don't see myself changing that. She might not be verbally saying that, but her actions are showing that that's what's actually going on, at which point, again, as hard as it is to step up to, you got a decision to make. Do you continue to stay with this woman who's going to do this thing that you find disrespectful, but overall other things are great, and you can just kind of like say, as much as that annoys me, I'm going to not make it a big deal? Or do you say, you know what, this is a big deal and I got to be out? And if you're being real with yourself, you're going to make the right decision in that moment versus trying to fight her later on about changing something that you've always wanted her to change, which in effect does make you the a-hole. So hopefully that gives some more understanding to what I've been talking about up to this point. And now I will take your guys' questions. If you have any questions you want me to answer in the chat like this guy here, I will be happy to answer it. This one guy commented on the topic we just did, and he said, yes, people are who they are, and don't choose them for what you want them to be. Leopards don't change their spots. That's all I'm saying. Like real talk, like, hey, again, I teach you guys all this stuff because I have done this stuff. I was the guy back in the day that wore the Cat Them Save 'em cape and thought to myself, I can totally change her. Oh, she's not on time for stuff. Or, oh, she always talks down on herself. Or, oh, she's always saying, sarcastic things to people, and I can totally change those things. And I just learned that the energy you're going to put into trying to change somebody, you could just find another woman that's already that way. Like if you're a person that's a stickler for being on time, you could just find a girl that is on time for stuff. Now I know I say that and people think, but Harry, it's not so easy to get a girl like that. It is easy to get women if you know the right things to do. I have a whole YouTube channel here with over 1,000 videos that can start giving you a leg up on what the right and wrong things to do are. And then beyond that, I have a whole website, Introvert Dating Success, that has ebooks and audiobooks. My best-selling book right now actually is my Stop Losing Women book. It's literally a book that teaches you the ins and outs of how to stop losing women. But I also have, programs on how to attract women, how to communicate with them. But you knowing these skills will make it easier for you to meet women when you go out into the world. And therefore, as a result of having that skill set, if the woman you're currently dating is bogging you down because you realize, oh, they're acting in ways that I don't want in a long-term partner, you won't feel like you have to be tethered to them because you can't get anybody else. You'll know that you can get somebody else because you'll know that you have the skill set to do just that very thing. But that guy's absolutely right. Don't assume that how you met her is going to be completely different from how she is 5 years from now or 10 years from now, regardless of if marriage, family, and kids come into play. We got a question here in the chat. I think it's a question. So this guy says, I have a girl. She showed me her interest. I asked her to go on date for two, but she was, what? Okay, let me backtrack. Okay, I have a girl. She showed me her interest. I asked her to go on date for two. I guess that's date number 2, maybe. But she was informing me she has some things I didn't ask her again. After days, I tell her how I feel. Then she said, I got someone talking to, then I move away. After time goes, she is coming back, want to know plans, but now she is the one want to lead conversation. What to do before I tell her how I feel, was the one leading but replying. Please, please, please put your sentences together better with like punctuation and guys, real talk. If you're having an issue writing things in a good sentence structure, use ChatGPT. Like you can say, I'm trying to say this, please edit it for me, and then it will help me read it better. So matter of fact, let me just see some stuff right here. So I can't copy it. Okay. So I'm going to answer what I think this guy's question is. For purposes of editing, I'm going to reword it so it sounds more tangible. So this guy asked a question. He says, Harry, I have a girl that showed me interest. I asked her to go for a second date, but she was informing me that she has somebody else she's talking to. I didn't ask her again. After a few days, I told her how I felt, and then she said again, I have someone that I'm talking to. Then I moved away. After time goes on, she's trying to come back, and she wants to know and make plans, but now she is the one that wants to lead the conversation. What do I do before telling her how I feel? I was the one leading, but replying. I think that's how that's read. Here's the thing, guy. For one, you might be new to my stuff, so I'm gonna be gentle on you, right? There is this common lie that men believe, which is that in order to get a woman to want to go out with you, you first have to tell her your interest and how you feel about her and how you've always wanted her and how you could see you two together, and then ask for the date. And that is something that trips up a lot of guys, because that essentially is putting the cart before the horse. The reality is, here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like to you when you're going up to a woman to ask her for a date. You're telling her, hey, I feel this way about you, and I want you to know in advance that the reason I'm about to ask you on a date is because I really care about you. It's not about sex or hookups. It's about this idea that I think we go really great together. And so I don't want to play games early on. I want you to know up front that I like you, because now that'll leave you open, ideally, to this idea that we should at least explore seeing each other to see if maybe you would also feel that way too. So now that I've told you all that stuff, I'm hoping that that's going to make you be open to going on a date with me. That's how we view telling women our feelings before we ask them on dates. And here is how women view that. hey, lady, I just want you to know that I'm already ready to marry you. And even though you're not aware of it, I've been thinking about you for a long time. And I have all these feelings. And, I don't know if you have feelings, but I'm just telling you now that I have all these feelings because I want you to feel these same things right now in this moment, even though you don't really know me and you haven't got to know me and all this other stuff. And so please, 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 please accept me on a date because I really, really love you and care for you and I'll do great by you. That is a lot of pressure. And a woman is also sitting there thinking to herself in her head, how does this guy have all these romantic feelings for me? At no time have we actually been romantically involved. He's never hinted at trying to go out with me. And it literally went from either I barely know this guy or we've just been friends to he magically has all these feelings. Where do these feelings come from? This feels disingenuous. It feels a bit manipulative, even though on a guy's end of things, we're not going to understand why that feels manipulative. All I know is that for them, it feels like some kind of manipulation is going on. This is way too much. And so you know what? I got to now figure out a way to let this guy down gently because he's coming to me with all these feelings, which means he's thinking I should have all these feelings. And at the moment, I do not. So now I got to reject him because that's not where I'm at. And that's when you get I'm seeing other people or, I appreciate that so much, but oh my God, right now, just bad timing and work and blah, right? So this is why, guys, it is not good because for women, the idea is that the reason you ask them for the date first is because that is a low-level inquiry. To them, it's saying, hey, you know what? There might be an interest here, but I'm not totally sure what that looks like yet, but I want to find out because right now it's a maybe for me. I don't really know. So you know what? Hey, if we just go out for like a dinner and chat, it's low pressure. I'm not asking for sex or relationship. Just go out for a chat and see what's what, and we'll get a nice meal out of it. If nothing else, we'll have a good time talking. And then after that, we'll just see where it goes. And that to women is low pressure. That will make a woman be like, you know what? Because I've had women that I didn't think would ever want to be in a relationship with me, but I would just be like, hey, are you free this time? I remember one time I met this girl at like my friend's mom had died, and that's not where I met her, but my friend's mom had died, and so in honor of her memory, she participated in a cancer walk and invited some of her friends to come with her to it. So I went with her to the cancer walk, and she had like 5 or 6 other people there, including this really attractive female friend of hers. And so we had a walk for it's like a 2-mile walk. And so during the time, I'm just kind of talking to her, get to know her, and I'm realizing, this has been a pretty good connection. So at the end of it, I just said, hey, we'd love to keep in touch. Let me get your number. Got her number. It was like 2 months later. And by the way, I stressed 2 months later because you guys are thinking, I got to ask for the date right away. I waited 2 months from when I got her number to when I talked to her again. I wasn't talking to her every single day. I literally just at one day decided, you know what, I'm going to a comedy show and I want somebody to go with me. And I hit her up. I literally said in the text, hey, so-and-so, wanted to go to this comedy club, wanted to see if you wanted to make it a date. Let me know if you're free. I used the word date. The next communication that I had with her was, hey, I want to take you on a date. I said the word date. I made her know that it is a date. And she said, oh, that sounds so fun. Yeah, let's totally do it. Why did she say yes? Because I wasn't telling her, hey, just so you know, that day that we met at the friend's cancer walk, like I thought we had a really good rapport and I really started to like you and I really start to feel things for you. And I just think we'd be so great together. And by the way, let's go on a date. Because that would have been saying, essentially, I already view you as my girlfriend. So I'm really asking you out as if we're already boyfriend and girlfriend. And that, again, applies pressure versus just putting out there the date. She has no idea what your intentions are yet. And guys find that crazy. Like, if she doesn't know my intentions, why would she want to go out with me? The reason she's going out with you is to find out your intentions. And women like the idea, part of the fun for them for dating is having to find out what your intentions are. It's the whole thing of like, it's a bit of a mystery. She's not totally sure where you're at. She's not sure where this date's going to go, but she wants to go on the adventure of finding it out. The finding out part is the part that women like. So when you come along and give all the feelings, you're not giving her anything to find out, and you're already laying it all on the table of feelings that you think you have, even though you don't really know her. And that's the other thing. When women know that you don't really know them all that well, they're wondering, how can he think I'm so great already? He doesn't know me. So that's why she freaked out. Now, in terms of the other half of this, you notice that she went away or you moved away or whatever, and you left her alone. And what happened when you left her alone? Out of nowhere, she decides to hit you up. She decides to, from what I'm getting, leave the conversation. She decides to be the one to say, hey, we should make plans together. Why did that happen? Well, you left that little nugget of bomb that you're interested in. And I've done this before too, where I've told women, hey, I'm really interested. I really like you. And it did not go well. They did not want to date me in the moment, right? But then you left her alone. What did that do? It showed her that maybe you're not as needy and desperate. Maybe you were asking her out. And at the time, she thought that you were blabbing your feelings because you had no other prospects. But now you've left her alone for a bit. And she's thinking, wait, so I turned him down. And then he didn't try to hit me up. He didn't try to ask me out again. He didn't chase me down to be his girlfriend. Interesting. Maybe he did have other prospects. Maybe I was making up in my head that he was so obsessed with me, because women don't want you to be obsessed. They want you to like them but not be obsessed. So she could have thought in the moment that you telling all these feelings meant you were being obsessed. But when you left her alone, it made her realize, okay, maybe he just liked me enough to go on a date, but he wasn't obsessed. Maybe he's got other options. I don't know. But you leaving her alone was the best strategy you could have possibly done, because now she's coming towards you, which means in effect, she is now chasing you. And as I always say it with me, guys, if she's chasing you, she can't be replacing you. So now you've put it in her hands to go after you, which is where we want this to be. So at this point, the good news is the power's in your hands. But what you don't want to do is think, oh, now that she's coming towards me, I got to go back to her and say all these feelings. No. You don't have feelings for her. What you have is you have hope and you have lust and you have these ideas in your head about what this could be. But you don't actually love her or have high feelings because you don't know her well enough to know what your feelings would actually be if you spent a good amount of time with her. So here's what you do. Very simple. She's coming to you. She's saying, hey, we should make plans. Your next move is simply to make the plan. You say, hey, great. You know what? Because as the guy, it's still your job to lead on what you're going to actually do for the activity. So this is her giving you a chance to show up and show out, right? So you ain't got to be overly spend a lot of money or be overly expensive or expressive and stuff like that. Make it simple. Be like, hey, you know what? There's a great restaurant downtown. Why don't we just go downtown and chat? I'm free on this day or this day. Let me know what works for you. And then you shut up. That's it. You just leave that at that and wait for her to come back and tell you what days and times work for her. And then say, great, it's a date. I'll meet you at the place at this time, and then show up for the date and then have a good time. Things not to do. Do not bring up feelings. Do not talk about future together, and don't try to be overly touchy-feely towards her. Let her be the one to initiate the touch barrier. Beyond that, if you go to my website, you can either get my Stop Losing Women book, or you can join the Introvert Dating Success Academy program. In either of those, I have a video. It is an hour-long video called What to Do on Your First Date that guarantees you get a second one. And it walks you through how your entire night should go in order for you to have the best chance of continuing dating this woman. So consider checking those things out. But beyond that, it also gives you tips and guidance on, after that date, how do you show up? What things do you analyze in order to make sure that this is the girl for you and that you can see where her head's at? Because at no time do you want to be trying to ask her, so how are you feeling on this date? And how do you feel about me? No. You need to get out of the habit of asking women at all to give you intel on how you're doing. Like, you'll know you're doing well when you ask a woman for the next date and she says yes. That is the only intel you need and care about, all right? If you start trying to ask questions, you look non-confident, you look needy, you look like you're not really sure of yourself, and that will turn women off even faster than what you did here, all right? So hopefully some of what I said here has helped you out. We have a question here in the chat. The question is, Harry, where do you see yourself in 5 years in your dating journey? How important is setting goals and sitting to them regarding, okay, I'm going to read, he wrote it again, so I'll read it again. So question is, Harry, where do you see yourself in 5 years in your dating journey? How important is setting goals and sticking to them regarding dating, relationships, marriage, etc.? Well, I will say on the personal front, I don't typically dive overly deep into the stuff going on with me, because I honestly, this is my honest truth, right? There was a guy I used to follow years ago, and he was like really, really big in the pickup artist community, or not even pickup artists, he was just generally giving guys a lot of dating advice. Some of the stuff that we talk about today, this guy established, not Doc Love, but some other guy, right? And so eventually he ended up getting married. And, you know, one could be objective about his wife, but that's the point, is that the woman he ended up marrying, to me, is just okay. Like, to him, she's a total knockout, total 10 in his eyes. They got kids now, it's whatever. But to me, objectively, it's like, eh. And so I find that, you know, I talk about dating things that I've gone through. I don't talk necessarily about my personal dating life as it is now or going forward, because really, ultimately, you guys watching this, it's more about me helping you with your personalized journey. So I will say that, I have dated in abundance. I continue to do well. And that's about as far as I go in terms of my personal stuff for the moment. But in terms of your guys' stuff, I do believe this. I believe that if you're a guy that legitimately wants a long-term relationship, for one, being a guy, you have the benefit of you can wait a little bit longer, until you're older, because, if you're trying to have kids, your sperm's never going to get old. There are guys that are 70, 71 still having kids because the sperm doesn't change up, but women's eggs do. So they have a bit more of a time clock than we do. But regardless, ideally, think about this, right, is that a lot of the skill sets that it takes to be a good dater and a good person in a relationship also carry over to things like your other personal relationships, your family relationships, and also your business relationships. I can assure you, the better you get at business, it means having to fix things like communication skills, conflict resolution, knowing when to be there, when not to be there, having patience. And so all those skill sets will also help you in relationships. The sooner you're able to get those skill sets, the sooner it will be that you'll start to have a better dating life. And then from there, it really does boil down to mapping out with that other person. What does a future with that person look like? Now, you're not going to do that necessarily in the first month of dating, in the first 2 months of dating, but ideally you're with somebody that at the very least, if they have the same kind of goals or not, if you in reference to having kids, living in certain areas, having, different types of jobs and stuff like that. Is she going to be stay at home or not stay at home? How are you guys going to support the family and going long term? What kind of activities do you guys like doing together? Those are things that are very, very important in terms of dating. In terms of how long that stuff takes, I would say it varies from person to person, but on average, you should be able to date a woman a minimum of 2 years to know if, based on that long of dating her, if she's going to be a good long-term partner. But that also means knowing what kind of conversations to have, what kinds of questions to ask, what kinds of things to look for during that 2 years of dating, so that way you're not fooling yourself. Women, this whole show has been talking about the fact that women will do things early on that you don't like, and yet guys will still accept them. And it's but if you knew that was going to be a problem behavior that you didn't want to deal with long term, then it was your job to either talk to her about it and see if it could be fixed, or get rid of it if you realized it wasn't going to. And that is very important, because if you're just, in the first 2 years thinking, well, I'm getting good hookups and we're having an overall good time, and so there's some little things here, but I'll get back. I'm telling you, they're only going to get worse later on. If she's showing signs of jealousy in the first few months of dating, that's going to be the downfall of your relationship. If you're a person that's religious and she says she's not religious, that's going to be the downfall of your relationship. And so if you're mindful of that stuff and you're dating with intent, then you'll do the right things during the first 2 years to make sure that you guys are going to go together long term in a real way. And this boils down to things like talking about parenting. If, little Johnny comes home and he did something bad at school and you want to spank him and she doesn't, that's going to be a problem. Are you guys talking about that stuff now while you guys don't have kids? Because it's a lot harder to have those conversations once kids come. And so that's just a small example, but suffice to say that, ultimately it's important to really have these conversations. If you have certain goals as a couple, you want to put those together and then try to stick to them. And you'll find that the journey for knowing who's going to be good long-term gets easier if you're doing those things. If you're living in la la land and things are a fantasy, and that because you guys love each other, the power of love is going to make you last long-term, then you're not living in reality, and it's going to ultimately cause your downfall. So hopefully some of what I just said answers that question. All right. And so for you guys that want a real way to fix how you're dating and fix your relationships with other people, then consider going to introvertdatingsuccess.com and checking out my Introvert Dating Success Academy community. It is chock full of video courses, ebooks, audiobooks, and programs designed to really elevate your dating game and to understand women in a way that's going to allow you to better communicate with them and to get them in your good graces to where you can get the women that you desire. You can also watch my videos for free on YouTube. I don't care. You can get my Texting Like a Boss book right now. It's on sale for $3. You can get that at the website right now. You can get some of my ebooks. I just want you to get the education in whatever way is going to be most effective for you. And so I have a variety of ways to do that, but seriously, liking this video and subscribing definitely helps out the channel and the algorithm at large. All right. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for checking out this edition of Harry Dating Combos. I'll be back later this week with another show, so be sure to check out with me then. All right. For now, I'm out. Peace.